Tonight we take a journey, one that starts in the small, quaint community of Forbes Hill, Exuma. It's a place where life is simple, values run deep, and dreams are as boundless as the turquoise sea. This is where the story of I. Chester Cooper begins, a boy who loved fishing, who grew up surrounded by the values of his community, and who dared to dream of something greater. But this is more than a story of one man's rise from humble beginnings to the seat of Deputy Prime Minister. It's a story about perseverance, ambition, and the power of community. It's about how the foundation laid in a tiny island settlement can shape a leader who now stands at the forefront of Bahamian politics. This is On the Record, and tonight we go beyond the title, beyond the position, to meet the man, the leader, and the Exumian whose journey continues to inspire. Stay with us. Our show begins on the other side of this break. Our journey begins about 9 miles south of Georgetown in Forbes Hill, one of the major settlements in Little Exuma. It's a small farming community that, despite its humble existence, produced a leader who rose to the second highest office in the nation. We were given a tour of the charming settlement, and this was our first opportunity to chat, to see our distinguished guests in a new light.
And welcome to this special edition of On the Record. We're on location in beautiful Exuma at the Forbes Hill Cultural Center, where we are about to explore the life of a man who holds probably the second highest office in government, but also is very pivotal to our number one industry, which is tourism, but certainly began his journey here in Forbes Hill. So we're in this beautifully renovated cultural center. Let's begin by talking about what this means to you and being in this place, the kind of memories it brings back as a little boy growing up in Forbes Hill.
Firstly, thank you for having me on your show. Forbes Hill brings back warm, fond memories of growing up in this small village. Total population then and now is probably about 45, closely knit. Half of the community family directly, and really it's an opportunity now as we visit the Forbes Hill Cultural Village to reflect on those times when we had very little, but we had a great life nonetheless. The grounding of who I am started right here, and of course this is the most beautiful place on planet Earth, right here in Forbes Hill. I think an astronaut, Scott Kelly, looked down and thought the Bahamas was beautiful. I suspect he was looking at Forbes Hill.
I can give you that one. I will definitely give you that one.
This is my old school. On the hill, I was grade 1, 2, and 3. Down here, 4, 5, and 6. And this is really my gift to this community. I thought it important to establish the legacy of Forbes Hill. There's more work here to be done, but this is an opportunity for entrepreneurs to thrive. It's an occasion to tell our story, who we are, what this community is about, and we will continue to progress really to build this cultural center into a village that speaks to our upbringing. So whether it's the Coopers or the Bullards or the Sayers or the Fergusons or the Bows, we all have fond memories of this community. We come back for homecoming. We're grateful of the very humble start that we've had, and we are delighted to be able to now, as a result of that grounding, to make a contribution to the national landscape.
It speaks in many ways to a close-knit community, things that we see throughout the Bahamas, throughout the archipelago. This is what we see here really is a microcosm to me of the Bahamas in so many ways. But because we are in what was once your schoolhouse, your schoolroom, I want to talk about the importance that education played in your life and in the context of a family island education, because I think that is missed on us sometimes. And there's a different type of education, has a different feel in the family islands. Tell us, the role that education in this place played in your life and in your success.
Firstly, this is an all-age school where in this small room there were multiple classes and there were a few students in each class. And I guess you can make the argument in retrospect that because of the small class size, we got the personal attention and affection of our teachers. But truly we had very little. The first time I saw a microscope was when I went to high school in grade 9. And this was a place where we had no running water or electricity. We had a outhouse in the back, and we had the fondness of being creative and using our imagination. We put on performances at night that we call programs, etc. And really from that was a lesson really of using what you have to create something more. From here I went on to the Ellen Coakley High School and found that notwithstanding the limitations here at the Forbes Hill All-Age School, I was able to compete with my peers all across the island, and then onward to the College of the Bahamas for a similar experience, and onward to Canada. And it made me truly realize that the foundation I got here truly did take me around the world. And I think that in and of itself is an incredible outcome. My mother believed strongly in education, the value of education. We were going to school, all 12 of us. We were going to college, all 12 of us. So said, so done, because she believed that this was the great equalizer. She believed that if we achieved education, we could do anything. And I think the spirit of believing in us and believing in the power of education inspired me to keep going, inspired me to do well wherever I went. And I recognized, and I still do wherever in the world I go. I don't just say I'm from Forbes Hill. I don't just say I'm from the Bahamas or from Exuma. I say Forbes Hill, Little Exuma, so that people understand that there is a foundation from a very obscure little place. And I hope that by telling my story, I could be an inspiration to other young people in other little towns, whether it's Bering Point or Pompey Bay or Alistown, wherever they are across the islands of the Bahamas. I want children to understand that it's possible for them to excel in business, politics, and leadership, and really it's at their reach to do extremely well in whatever they put their minds to, so long as they work hard and they focus on education and not get caught up with the obstacles of poverty or distraction. But if they stay focused on whatever their mission in life is, it could be achieved. And I believe the story that I've written in Fishing in on the Rocks is designed really to inspire others.
So I'm going to use this opportunity really to transition to this book. You decided to write a book about your life and your influences. The fact that your mother had 12 children. All of you all went to school. All of you all went to college. That's an amazing feat all unto itself. But you decided to write this book to tell your story. I want to talk first about the title and why you chose the title and why you thought it important to tell your story and to share that story of inspiration.
So firstly, Fishing in on the Rocks is a play of words in a way, but it's an activity of fulfillment and enjoyment. Fishing in on the Rocks was my escape from the minutiae or the hard work that I experienced as a young forced entrepreneur, having to work very hard to survive, to buy lunch, And the concept of fishing was also to make dinner. But importantly, if we play on the adage of teaching a man how to fish and him being able to feed himself for a lifetime, I think that was the critical element of naming this book, Fishing in on the Rocks. Fishing is something that I have taught my children to do, and they love it the way that I did as a child. So there's a connectivity, there's a line drawn from them to me through fishing. And anybody who fish understand that it brings to life the trash talking from within. And even in my quietest child, my daughter Chloe, when she starts to fish, there's an element of excitement that she gets, and we see the burgeoning of her competitiveness. But going from fishing to buy dinner, and fishing as an escape from the obstacles and the trials of life, to it becoming a pastime now, I think is a story of having come full circle in a way. But really I want to now ensure that I teach my children how to fish, and I teach other young people how to fish. And the rocks really was what we had. So it's using what you have really to achieve the desired result. We didn't have fancy boats or rods. We had a line on a stick. We cast it from the rock with a hook, and we were able to make dinner. And I think this is the message of really using your imagination, using the little resources that you have to be successful in the desired outcome.
I just want to, before I go to the next question, point out that this exact same crew was here a few months ago, and we were fishing in Staniel Key, and there's a big row amongst us about who caught the most fish, and it was a whole debacle. So
Fishing,
you're right.
Fishing does that.
Hey, listen, who gets the first one? Who got the biggest one? And you got to experience it as a group,
Yes,
to really get that feeling. So I get you completely in understanding. But you know, as we prepare to really wrap up this segment, I want to speak though to how your experience in this small community, in this family island, not only shaped your life, but helped to get you where you were later in life. And how many other Chester Coopers may be out there in those communities that are overlooked, or that we aren't tapping into, or that don't see that they have a future, or they can achieve what you've achieved. Are there many more out there, and how do we find them? And not just males, but females as well, but just young Bahamians in these communities who have such great potential, but don't see it or don't have access to it.
So I accept that I am blessed. I have been blessed all my life. I accept that I have some gifts, and I recognize that I had opportunity through the graciousness of the community, having been discovered as someone who applied myself in school, etc. From doing so, I got scholarships from the generosity of business people in Exuma who identified the potential that I had. So to your question, it's important that we constantly seek out the potential stars all across this country. And oftentimes we see singers, we see athletes, we see people who are good at academics, and we know that had they had the opportunity, there's a chance that they could have gone to the NBA or the NFL, or they could have been a professional musician had they been discovered. So Fishing on the Rocks really is hopefully an inspiration for young people to say, if Chester Cooper could have done it from Forbes to Little Exuma, I can do it as well. And hopefully they can help to be discovered themselves by pushing themselves into the limelight, having the confidence to do so, and recognizing that the Bahamas is such a great country that the village will come together and bring the support to them and help them to succeed the way that I have been able to do. So if there is a great outcome from Fishing in on the Rocks, I hope it will be a top seller. But if it's not, I hope it would simply reach some young people and give them the inspiration to say, I can do that too.
Most definitely, and hopefully at some point it'll be, introduced to curriculum. But I do want to, thank you for doing that, because I think far too often many of our leaders and politicians wait until they are retired or out of the business or old to write books. But it's important that you tell the story now while you are still living it. So definitely kudos to you with that. Now we have a lot more to get to. We're going to take a ride in just a few moments and go up the road, as they say in the island. And when we come back, we're going to speak to our guest really about his early life, becoming an entrepreneur, and starting a family and being able to do all of that while looking ahead to politics. So you're watching On the Record. We're going to be back right after this. Welcome back. We're on a special on-location shoot at the beautiful Exuma Palms here in Exuma. There are a few times I get out of the studio and enjoy a beautiful background and a beautiful setup like this, and certainly Exuma is always happy to welcome us. And certainly our conversation continues with our Deputy Prime Minister, our Minister for Tourism, Investments and Aviation, as well as the Member of Parliament for this island and the Exuma constituency. So we spent a little time in Forbes Hill, where you grew up, what influenced your early life. At what point in your life did your path begin to change? Because growing up on a family island, you yourself have said there are not a lot of examples of what you could be or what you should be or where you need to go in life. But how did that path really begin for you and begin to shape your life beyond just the family island boy living in this small community?
I think as we talked earlier about my strong family structure and the depth of my faith and the orientation to education and doing well and being ambitious, I had some good examples in my family itself. All of my siblings who had gone on before me were in college. I was going to college. I didn't know how. We had no money. But I had done exceptionally well in school, and therefore I was fortunate to have good examples and access to some scholarships. So my brothers in particular, who had become professionals, my brother Udaijah had a master's degree from the 1980s. He'd been extremely successful working in Bahamas and New York and elsewhere. And therefore there were a handful of role models within my family, but also I was able to identify in the community good, positive models of professional success. So notwithstanding there was nothing in Forbes Hill, as we saw, the reality of it was that I was able to project what I could be on the basis of what my siblings themselves had done. Coincidentally, I wanted to be a lawyer initially. And
I think we all entertained that at some point.
In retrospect,
yes.
I think we're all happy that we went a different path.
I know I am.
Quite frankly, but there was no money for me to go to law school. There were no scholarships to study law. I ended up studying economics, and the rest is history. I paved a path in banking, in investments, insurance, that made me extremely successful professionally, having worked in Bahamas, in Dublin, and in Luxembourg, in the world's largest banks, the SG, Hambros, and Coots & Co, NatWest of the world. So that gave a solid foundation for business, for investments, for investing, and therefore I was able to pivot into using those skills of crafting deals to craft my own deal, using those skills of savings and investing, the messages that I taught as a part of my profession to seminars and groups and investment clubs, etc. I was then able to pivot and apply my own lessons. So with good modeling, a solid background, and the ability really to understand the opportunities ahead of me and being able to pivot, I believe it set a path for the rest of my business success.
Your mother was an entrepreneur. What or how did she influence you? Watching her, navigate her business, pursue her ambitions. What kind of influence did she have on you?
Well, let me be clear that my mother was an entrepreneur out of necessity. It for her was about sheer survival. And in retrospect, I was an entrepreneur as well, perhaps from 6 years old, because whatever she did, I did. Sure. So we had a farm. We grew vegetables and fruits and animals and sheep and pigs, and we sold those produce. She had a small clothing store, although I point out in my book that she probably gave away more clothing than she actually sold. We did a little bit of everything. I recall cracking rocks. Now you buy P rocks by the truckload. Back then we cracked those rocks and we sold them to local contractors. I think our biggest business was cutting tops. Tops is like the middle of the palm that's used for straw work. So we cut those, we put them in a bundle. We sold them, I believe, it was $7 or $10 at the time. And that is the beginning of the supply chain, if you will, for what you see in the straw market.
Sure.
This was all very difficult work. And I hated it, quite frankly. But the lessons of persistence, resilience, and hard work, and pivoting when necessary was absolutely critical. So if she was not making money in her clothing business, which she hardly ever did, we still needed to survive. And therefore we would move to the straw work, or we would plait the straw, or she would weave baskets. There was always something going on.
There was always a source
in our
of income.
house as a necessity to be able to survive. And in the small communities, these weren't big businesses. These were what we call cottage industries. And from time to time, we caught fish, and if we got an abundance, we would give some away. We would sell some. But all of these activity was a part of creating the fundamentals of my successful business career, because all of the lessons of managing your supply and your product, and collecting your revenues, and containing your cost, and keeping good relationships with your customers, and delivering on your promise, and being honest with integrity, and keeping your word, is really the fundamentals of a successful career, not just in business but in any profession.
So you have gone off to college, you have started your career, you're moving into a business, but you're also building a family at the same time. And I know for a lot of people that's a challenge, because you want to be successful, you want to give it your all, but you want to have a personal life, you want to have a family. So I want to talk really about the role that your family has played in your life and building your family. And I know from following you on social media that you are very much a family man and always involved with your family and doing something. How important, has your family been to your success in business and in politics?
Firstly, I was very fortunate to come from a strong grounding, with my mother being the solid matriarch, having lost my father at the age of 5, and my siblings coming together as a part of a very solid unit. We were taught to look out for each other, and my mother was very strict and protective, so she wanted to ensure as much as possible we were hanging out together and we were playing together, being very mindful of the possibility of bad influences and bad company. So I think all of that collectively, along with the fundamentals of godly living, caused there to be an orientation of the need for strong family upkeep and to create the right work-family balance. Being a very ambitious businessman and professional, I must tell you, maintaining life, family, work balance has not always been my forte. And I think if you speak with Cecilia today, she will still tell you that there are elements of a workaholic that still exist. Significant elements, she would say. But I enjoy my work very much. But at the same time, I enjoy spending time with my children more than anything else I do. And my greatest moments is when all 3 of my children are together, enjoying each other, learning from each other. And I have an opportunity to watch them grow, all 3 magnificently beautiful in different ways with uniquely different personalities. And I can see streaks of me in all of them. And I have been incredibly fortunate and blessed to have great success in business, but also in my family life. And therefore, there is something to be said about ensuring that I was intentional in spending time with my children in particular, to ensure that they had a father who was there. So whilst I didn't have the good fortune of growing up with my father, I had the fortune of knowing who he was, and knowing that he was there through no fault of his own. And I wanted to ensure that my children had an experience what I didn't have the opportunity to experience. But also there's an obligation to the next generation to continue the legacy, to build upon whatever successes I would have had. My mother was a grassroots entrepreneur. I took it to the next level. I hope that my children will respect the work that I would have put in and sustain our family accomplishments into the next generation, as well as understand the grounding that's required to live good, decent lives themselves.
Final question in this segment. You have connected all the dots up to now, from your childhood, college, business, family, and then you decide to go into politics. What was the impetus for that and why?
Well, my friends thought I lost my mind. Some of them still think that I'm crazy. But I believe that when you are blessed, you must be a blessing. When a country has been as good to me as the Bahamas has been, that I have an obligation to give back. When my hometown and my island have been so good to me as a child, as a part of the village, to cause me to succeed, do extraordinarily well and have a great life. I have an obligation, therefore, to ensure that other young boys and girls from small communities like Forbes Hill or Ramsey or any settlement in Exuma would have the same chances and opportunities and success and possibilities that I had. So I've started a scholarship fund, the Louise Cooper Scholarship Fund. I have championed entrepreneurship programs. I am actively mentoring young business people. I make myself available whenever I can to talk with budding entrepreneurs. I never pass up an opportunity to celebrate an entrepreneur or a new business. In fact, I enjoy that very much, because I believe that is a part of my calling and my national service for the next generation.
Sure.
I believe if we all do something to help to serve mankind and serve our country, the Bahamas will certainly be better off for it.
I'm happy to hear you say that your call into politics is a call for national service. I think that is admirable, and I wish more politicians would see it as that. So we have a lot more to talk about. We're going to talk politics on the other side of the break. Coming to you from the beautiful spot of the Exuma Palms Resort here in Exuma. You're watching On the Record. Our final segment when we talk politics and everything that comes along with it right after this break. And we're back, still here at the beautiful Exuma Palms. DPM, we've spent some time prior to this talking about your early life, how you got into business and politics, but now we're going to talk, I want to say, purely politics. So let's talk first about how was it entering politics and also staying connected to your community at the same time? I know a lot of politicians struggle with that, particularly when you have positions in the cabinet, and in your case, the Deputy Prime Minister portfolio as well as the Minister of Tourism portfolio. That's a heavy portfolio. How do you stay connected with the community?
I think it helped that this is home. Born and raised here, this is a place I love. This is a place I really enjoy coming to hang out with my family. And therefore, it serves a dual purpose every time I come. And because I'm a homeboy, so to speak, the reality is moving about is interacting with people I know, people I grew up with, attending functions where I'm invited, or general community initiatives like regattas and homecomings and funerals and weddings, etc. The life of a politician is really, really 24/7, 365. So because it comes very natural in an environment where I am home, it causes a connection to remain stronger than it typically would have been had this been a job for me. So I make the point that, doing politics in Exuma has really been a calling. I've done it because I've been blessed, and I see it as an opportunity to be a blessing to others, and therefore the transition from private sector businessman, having accomplished much, moving into the realm of national service has been a fairly smooth transition.
Take us back to that moment when you realized that the community, this community that you grew up in, that you love, bestowed upon you the opportunity and the honor to represent them. What was that like for you in that moment?
I think it was a realization that it was an awesome challenge, responsibility, and obligation. It was a defining moment, given that all my life I had pursued personal ambitions. This was an opportunity to serve and help others. This was an occasion where I am able to identify young people who had similar struggles and challenges like I have had, who would need scholarships to go to college, who would need a start through the agencies of government perhaps to get involved with who would need some guidance and some mentorship from people like me to have an opportunity also to succeed. So what I looked at it as a calling, as I've said, really to give a significant contribution to Exuma and the people of Exuma, since they had been so good to me. And realizing that you are pursuing a calling is a lot different from going to work on a job. So I think it was a bit of a burden and a realization that you must deliver on the promise in lifting others up, and the responsibility now goes beyond your family to the entire village. So the village has been flipped on its head. The village had been good to me, and now I was a leader in that same village with an obligation.
The village now becomes your family and your responsibility, so to speak.
Absolutely.
What was it like, though, getting your feet wet in opposition politics? You won, but your party lost. You were among a small grouping of parliamentarians in the House at the time. What was that like, and how did that prepare you in some ways for governance?
Firstly, I didn't sign on to be in opposition. I didn't enjoy.
I think every politician.
I didn't enjoy being in opposition.
Sure.
And I hope I'm never ever in opposition again. So let's just be clear. There were 4 of us. There was an overwhelming majority in government. There was a very aggressive speaker who had not been trained for the job and didn't have the temperament to do the job. And therefore, it had been a very difficult experience for all of us. But with that said, it was an opportunity to learn government from the outside. There was some breathing room, so to speak, to learn parliamentary procedures, to learn what to do in government. And it was a great example of what not to do in government. But it really was an opportunity to step back a little bit, watch and reshape plans for an opportunity for government for the future. So it was a great learning experience of politics, learning experience of government. Me having come in from the business community, having not been in active frontline politics before, it was a great transition.
You were also in office, or you were in Parliament during the COVID-19 period. And what was that like for you, having to still serve your community? An island, we couldn't travel. There were so many things we could not do. Nassau got the majority of the attention, which it always does. But what was that like, and having to service your constituents at that time in a difficult period in time, but also being in opposition when you don't always have the resources that a government MP or a minister would have?
Firstly, there's never a textbook or a blueprint for handling circumstances like COVID. Hopefully, if we are faced with that type of scenario again, and hopefully we never will be, but I hope that was a learning experience, and we now have a framework for managing these types of crises. The government at the time, the Minister administration, did not do an impressive job. There were fits and starts, there were ad hoc decisions. It was really unpredictable. There was no rhyme or reason for some of the decisions, and therefore I believe it threw all of our lives into chaos. With that said, you play the hands that you're dealt. And having been a member of the community of Exuma, a representative of the people of the island of Exuma, I was able to put myself in their shoes, so to speak. Supply chains had been disrupted. Many persons were out of work, and I needed to kick in gear to provide some support, and that was bringing in trailers of food, for example, standing in the gap, providing support where we could, recognizing the difficulties of the situation, recognizing that the government didn't have the answers and didn't have the resources, and quite frankly didn't have the leadership acumen to manage the process smoothly. It was incumbent upon me as a member of parliament for the island of Exuma to bring leadership to Exuma, to try to control the pieces I could and to bring some form of balance to the lives of the people I was called to represent.
Following the last election, you were re-elected, became Deputy Prime Minister, and given the portfolio as Minister of Tourism. Was it coincidence that you represented the family island that probably has one of the most bustling tourism products in country? Was it something you sought out, or were you selected? How did that come about?
But let me tell you that all of what you just described happened extremely quickly. So you go from being a candidate and a politician on the campaign trail, and tomorrow you're the government, you're Deputy Prime Minister. We won, I believe, on a Thursday, and Saturday I was sworn in as Deputy Prime Minister, Minister responsible for tourism, investments in aviation. I think the portfolio that I had been fortunate to be given by the Honorable Prime Minister was a good fit in many respects. You mentioned the fact that Exuma is experiencing a renaissance and a growth in tourism, perhaps the fastest growing island in the Bahamas, having the responsibility therefore for tourism and for investments, the driver of most of the activity through foreign direct investments mainly, I thought was a great opportunity to continue to work for the people of Exuma and to continue to use Exuma as a model for the rest of the country. And we're seeing it even now in my representation. I recognize if we're going to continue the growth, we need investments in infrastructure. We need very serious investments in airports and docks and roads and clinics and schools and bridges, etc., if the growth is going to be maintained. But the combination of portfolios I thought was an exceptional fit. Aviation naturally is the oxygen that tourism needs to thrive. And if we're going to continue the growth of the tourism side, we need investments, not just foreign direct investments, but investments by locals. And this is why a part of my mission has been empowerment, the advancement of the Tourism Development Corporation, and to ensure Bahamians recognize that if we're going to sustain our islands and our overall economy, there must be a healthy balance between tourism and between investments, not just in tourism, but in all segments across the economy.
How do we get more Bahamians to invest in tourism and the spin-off businesses? Because one of the things that continues to distress me as a Bahamian is that after all of these years, we are still only able to capture a piece of the pie. You know, you look at the small hotels that are doing well, just like the one that we are in right now. You look at the businesses, but there is still so much more that we could be getting, you know, as opposed to just working within tourism. How do we get Bahamians to invest and to be successful and to reap the benefits of tourism that so many other foreign investors have been able to do over the years?
We're making some progress, but you're right, this is distressing. This is our main economic driver. We go out and we promote tourism, that tourists should come here. Importantly, we go out and we attract investors. For this vibrant industry, we put on a great sales pitch, but we are avoiding acceptance of that pitch ourselves. Over the years, we haven't seen many Bahamian businessmen and women invest in large hotels. We see some in Eleuthera, in Cat Island. We see many small boutique resorts. We see some here in Exuma. I point out Cat Island because I believe Cat Island has the highest concentration of Bahamian-owned resorts that I've seen anywhere across the islands of the Bahamas, and kudos to them. But we're making inroads through the Tourism Development Corporation. We are pushing every day, putting in place an enabling framework, talking about the opportunities, encouraging the very small vendors, operators, taxi drivers, tour operators, restaurant operators to expand their business, to step up their game. We are starting incubation centers on Bay Street where small businesses can come And we hope that these small businesses will grow and become medium-sized, larger businesses as we invite large entities and wealthy Bahamians to invest in the economy. If we continue to rely on foreigners to drive our economy, that will not be the most effective strategy for growth and sustaining growth and empowering Bahamians and keeping more of the money home. So it starts really with the enabling framework for small businesses, watching them grow to medium and large, and then watching those large businesses grow to big enterprises that might move regional or international.
You know, anytime I get an opportunity, I encourage Bahamians to invest in tourism and don't invest in the small things, but the big things. And like you said, I notice it all the time that we don't own the large hotels, but we invest elsewhere.
So, you know, I've been a businessman mainly in the financial services space, but had I been starting business today, had I still been a businessman, I would be investing in tourism, because I think that's the potential for greatest growth on opportunities. And really, when you hear tourists talking about not enough to do, for me as a business mind, it signals opportunity.
I hope folks are listening and hear that, invest in tourism. So we're going to switch course a little bit and really talk about the state of political discourse in the country. Recently, we saw an episode in the House of Assembly where an opposition member threw the mace out. It then escalated into an entire debacle where they were dejected from the House. But when you look at all of that and watching all of that unfold, what does it say to you about the state of political discourse in the country? And because people watch it and they ask, you know, what have we come to? What has happened? How did we get to this place?
I think you rightly described it as an episode. It was a very embarrassing, theatrical display of political gamesmanship. Most Bahamians were disappointed in the poor execution of the episode, given that Michael Pintard himself is a career actor. That's precisely what it was. There was no grounding, there was no plot, there was no substance. It was a bad B-rated movie trying to mimic a blockbuster, iconic movie of the past. That's really what it's been. We've seen that before. When it was done by the Progressive Liberal Party, Milo Butler, Sir Lyndon Pinling, A.D. Hanna, and the others, there were fundamental reasons why they considered that to be a moment to seize, to get the attention, turn power to the people, and the voices of the people had to prevail at that critical moment when we were fighting for things like independence and majority rule, and really very substantive things.
The opposition's criticism, though, is that they continue to, well, the speaker does not give them fair time to speak, and that there was an issue with the speaker. They have said it over and over and have gotten into quite a few, I would say, verbal skirmishes with the speaker.
Let me say that, firstly, the job of the speaker is a difficult one. Mm-hmm. Secondly, we have a significant upgrade in the quality of speaker in this administration than we had before. But thirdly, and to your question, the speaker at that moment never indicated to Michael Pintard that he would not speak. The speaker simply said, I am the chair of this session. I will make the determination. We have a speaker on the floor. When he is done, I will get back to you. In a time when we have so much chaos and violence and discord and bad behavior in our society, I would have thought would-be leaders and a man who seek to be Prime Minister of this country would set a proper example for young people. Firstly, he completely defied the instructions of the Speaker, who is the iconic authority in the House of Assembly. Secondly, the symbol of authority, the mace, was completely violated for purely theatrical political gain. And thirdly, they defied the orders of the police. The police came, asked the deputy leader to leave. Presumably there was a conversation, and they refused. That is not what we want to encourage in a modern, orderly society, and therefore it escalated. It was an embarrassing display. It's not who we are, and therefore I think the Free National Movement and the opposition ought to be ashamed of themselves as the way they conducted themselves, allowed it to escalate to a level that's unbefitting of Bahamian Parliament, and an outcome that's really not what we hope for as a message as leaders to the young people of our country. With that said, we all accept, having sat in opposition before, that the majority always rule and the minority should be heard, must be heard, and therefore it is important as leaders to exercise the type of finesse to get the kind of outcome that's desired to build a nation. They failed at it.
As we wrap up the segment and wrap up the show, the next few months and years as you head into that election cycle, and that's what's going to happen very soon. You're going to get into election mode. There are some critical issues that continue to face the country, like the economy, the cost of living. Those are dollars and cents issues that people face every day. We are still grappling with crime in many ways, and these are things in many instances that are a part of a governmental cycle. But as you move towards now the end of this term and looking now to be re-elected and enter that, what's going to be the message along with the actions that Bahamian people will see that you hope will engender the confidence to be re-elected when they do go to the polls, but also to make them see and appreciate what it is that you just spoke about, the moving forward, the getting the country back on track? What's going to be the message and the actions in the coming months and even 2 years that people will look forward to?
Firstly, we will look to the achievement of our promises as laid out in our blueprint for change. We will celebrate the successes that we have had and that we continue to have, and we will acknowledge that there is more work to do, and we will acknowledge that we have not been perfect in everything that we have done. But listen, the economy is roaring. The economy continues to be extremely strong. Unemployment is low. We're building infrastructure. We're developing the Family Islands. We are gearing up with 2 new hospitals to support the advancement of healthcare in our country. And we continue to press forward in driving a focus on all cylinders to achieve what we promised and committed to do for the Bahamian people. There are some things that continue to distress me as a leader. Firstly, the cost of living continues to be of concern, and it's a matter that we are actively discussing how we might bring some relief to the Bahamian people. But we must point out that this isn't uniquely Bahamian. This is driven by a global set of circumstances. But we have increased minimum wage, for example. We have provided increments and raises and promotions to civil servants. These are the types of policy initiatives that we put in place to help to mitigate. And there are more strategies that we are going to deploy on this particular issue. The other issue that frankly concerns me as a businessman is the ease of doing business. I do not believe that we have made sufficient progress on this issue, and therefore this is something we must consistently pay attention to. And then there is the issue of a large number of Bahamians who notwithstanding that they are working, who are still struggling in some way shape or form. And therefore, through the arms of government, we must seek to empower more Bahamians. We must get more Bahamians in business to be able to really influence their earnings, to create wealth, to hire more people, and to empower themselves and their families. So I think if we are able to carefully orchestrate our responses to the issues of crime, cost of living, if we are to make some impact on the ease of doing business, I think those will be extremely helpful for us over the course of the next 2 years. But importantly, we must continue all the work that we've done to empower Bahamians using the Small Business Development Center, Tourism Development Corporation, Bahamas Development Bank, and these various agencies, as we promised that we would do. Recall that we promised that we would put $50 million into entrepreneurship to help to empower Bahamians. I think we're well on the way to doing that. That work will continue, and I hope as a result of the overall rising tide of the economy that we can fairly well sustain the growth that we have been seeing, although it's plateaued in tourism. If we can continue to achieve the overall level of growth in our economy, create some new opportunities, then I believe that will bring some overall relief and empowerment to the Bahamian people.
And the word there is opportunity for me. That's what I always look forward to hearing our leaders say. DPM, Minister of Tourism, thank you so much for inviting us to Exuma. First of all, we're always happy to get out of the studio. But certainly you're doing a great work, and we've enjoyed our conversation on different levels. We wish you all the best. And as always, I know it's tough being in government, but certainly the country is looking forward to what the rest of the term will mean and what we will see as we continue to grow. I know there are many challenges, but it comes along with the work. Eh?
Thank you. We will continue to be focused on our promise in our blueprint for change. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for coming to Exuma.
Anytime.
I hope you stay a few days.
Yeah, no, I mean, we can come back to
leave some money in the economy.
Yeah, most definitely. Stay with us. We'll have some closing thoughts for you in just a moment. Tonight, we saw the heart of a leader who values his past as much as his present. A man who draws strength from his origins and carries those lessons with him into every decision he makes. A special thank you to the Deputy Prime Minister, the Honourable Chester Cooper, the Ministry of Tourism, Investments and Aviation, and the Exuma Palms Resort for inviting us here. And thank you for joining us tonight. Until next time, I'm Jerome Sawyer, and this was On the Record.